No, this is literally your user interface. It has to be there.
Why'd you have the volume off?
Because when I did watch it beforehand, and there were F-bombs.
Oh, really? I don't. It's a good thing I let you watch
it.
Called it.
The people have missed us. You see, you have to start the women out young. You have to teach them to drive through buildings at a young age.
I was going to say, she's doing really well. She's going to be top notch when she gets older.
Her husband's rims have no chance. Yo, we had a wild week, and I got sick before we went away. And then while we were away, I've been in a crazy headache cycle.
So I had terrible headaches every night during that trip.
Every night. I slept about 3 hours each night of that trip. And I've come home and I've slept about 3 hours every night since. So I get cluster headaches, and they are so painful. They wake me up out of a dead sleep. After I'll fall asleep, and then 2 hours later they wake me up out of a dead sleep. So it has been. Wait, my sister-in-law drove into a garage as a team. My wife did it recently. I mean, Rob, your wife has a crash story recently too. Wait, you guys want to hear a crazy wife story?
Oh no,
you guys want to hear? She never watches. Don't worry. My daughter, while we were away, she stayed with my brother Joey and got a really bad stomach ache. So she woke up in the middle of the night with a really bad stomach ache, and the pain was so bad she passed out and hit her head.
Your daughter?
Yeah, my daughter. While we were away, you didn't hear Joey tell me that's like he was staying at Joey's house. So
no, I didn't hear Joey say that.
So my wife, the past 2 days, has been setting doctor's appointments and stuff for her. So they went to a gastrointestinal doctor, and they're like, okay, well, let's start off with just like cutting out dairy and cutting some stuff out. So tonight, my wife makes.
She's Italian. What if they make her cut out tomatoes?
That would be well. She has Crohn's disease. It could happen. My wife has Crohn's disease, and she has to take like a lot of pills. And if it's hereditary, we're in trouble. But so my wife makes shepherd's pie for the first time tonight, but she makes the mashed potatoes with no milk and vegan butter for my daughter. And when I was,
did you have to go to McDonald's?
I had to pretend to like it. It was a rough dinner tonight. My wife's a great cook, but she was definitely.
I'll stand by that. The sauce she made for us.
Yeah, she's a great cook. My wife. She was severely handicapped during this incident. So, all right, man, it's been an exciting week. So here's the deal. Rob and I went away with about 8 guys to Pennsylvania, and we had a really amazing time. So while we were there, we recorded 2 of the. Nick was invited, but Nick decided. No, Nick had something personal going on at home, so he couldn't make it. So while we were there, we recorded probably about 5 hours of conversation, maybe 6. The first hour and 40 minutes is up on our locals, but it's behind a paywall.
It's actually the second night, but the conversations are separate. It doesn't matter.
Right. So I have another 3.5 hour video to go through and make sure I take any names out. So the first one was about 2 hours, and I cut 20 minutes of like, if we mentioned somebody's name, we don't know who's going to see it. So if you guys want to check that conversation out, it's about 8 guys sitting around smoking cigars, drinking bourbon, and just discussing the Catholic faith. We don't get into any of the drama in the church. We talk, some of it's how did this one convert? How did you come into the church? Stuff like that. It was a really, really good conversation. You guys think I'm loud on a show like this. couple glasses of bourbon, I'm very loud, and I'm also the one right next to the microphone. So my voice is pretty loud in those videos.
By the way, were you aware that there's alcohol in bourbon cream? Because from the way you were drinking, and I don't know if you were aware of that.
Oh, I was aware.
at one you
I poured a full glass
of ice
of it.
and you poured a full glass, and Todd's like, Anthony, you know there's alcohol in that, right? You didn't say anything, you just poured more and started drinking.
We had such a fun time with you guys. So what we're going to do is we're not going to bury the lead tonight. We're going to discuss the topic at hand, and then after the topic at hand, we will tell you guys all about our weekend.
We do have one thing to promote first, though.
Oh, yes.
So Enoch, who was on the trip with us, he has a new album coming out on November 1st, and we have this little promo video to show everyone.
I'm always saying gimmick is a sidetrack. We sell like it's free cause we don't see the price tag. Fight back, put that on the right track. Yeah, I'm on the right track. In the box, life hack. Saying it's a white black. Off the wall, Mike Jack. Heisman Trophy demons with the tight jab. Till you see a white flag. Stab the end of life and that's a light flash. In between that, I'm a side crash. Christ be my life raft. Fly so high, bring my kite back. And my head's so big that my cross be my ice pack. You in a state of grace, so you not. Mercy of God won't be mocked. 6 feet down on the plot. A life of sin to put you on the rocks. A life of sin to put you on the rocks.
Yeah, we
Now,
love Enoch.
I got a little inside information. So Enoch, who moved from San Diego to Kentucky, is getting a little bit more in touch with the Kentucky roots. So to do that, he wanted a little bit of banjo music, and I hear that Nick Cavazos is going to be on the album.
Get out of here. Is that real?
No, that's not real.
Okay. I'm like, wait, is that a true story?
Well, I was going to say, like, he should just move to bluegrass music because, you know, it's infinitely superior.
I mean, bluegrass is taking off right now with, what's his name? What's that guy? Oliver Anthony, right?
Yeah, the... what's it called? Richmond, north of Richmond.
Yeah,
I wouldn't
that's
call
strict
that bluegrass.
Like it's a cousin. It's like it's kind of like a new version of old country music, which I actually appreciate because like radio country is just hot trash. It's just like let me throw in some rap bars while I'm singing about my tractor, and you're just sitting there like, okay.
It's pretty terrible. So we've been off air for 2 weeks. We have almost 100 people in the chat because we have an important topic we're going to cover tonight. So before we get into it, I spent the past day and a half listening to other people's commentary. I have to
that
stop.
Way he can copy them.
Well, no, I'm thinking some people copied us. Well, at least
we haven't talked about it yet.
No, but the things we've been saying on Twitter.
True.
And because the first day, nobody said anything like what I put up. And then today, I saw a bunch of people doing second videos on the topic and actually almost word for word saying some of the things that I was saying.
Someone's coming after you.
Yeah, we'll have that fight another day.
Johnny Cash's base.
Now, I did attempt to listen to Lofton Pope's Plain.
What do you call him, Nick?
Oh, the thrice charitable, most prudent.
Yes. Yeah. So, and this, I'm not trying to bash Lofton. I actually tried to give it a chance and listen, and it was difficult. It was difficult
Your priest gave you a tough penance in your confession.
So listen, the thing is, there are some good things in what we're going to discuss is not even the new Dubia that was submitted. I want to discuss the first Dubia and the response. That's the main thing I want to get into because in classic Francis fashion, you get very orthodox things mixed in with the subtle things, and so when you listen to a guy like Lofton or even a lot of the people on Twitter that were arguing with me, telling me I'm crazy and I'm taking the Pope out of context, it's a very difficult thing when they only go through the good things that are said and try to downplay the problematic stuff.
Well, and I think the most important part about the rewritten Dubia is you should read the responsa from the DDF in light of the fact that there's been no answer to the rewritten Dubia.
Yeah, but also you can see why they rewrote a new Dubia because
well, I know. I know,
I
but what I'm
mean-
saying is like when they asked in the original, such and such and such, and then the DDF gives two sides in their answer, the fact that they could not just answer no is the real answer.
Yeah. So we're not going to do
and
what
we
these
all
other
know
guys
that
did.
Anthony is a bad man.
I am. Yeah, I had one guy tell me I'm a bad Catholic because I criticized Francis. So look, I don't want to go through the whole document. Other guys have done that. I want to get to the heart of the content, right? Like we're not going to sit here and give you the timeline and tell you all the little different things that happen. I mean, other guys did that. I really want to get to the heart of this issue, which is the same-sex unions thing. So I'm going to read Edward Penton's tweet and kind of go into what I responded to it, and then I want to hear some of Nick and what Rob and Nick think from it. So Pope Francis appears to open the door to same-sex blessings in his response to the Dubium number 2. Number 2, saying that priests may use their discretion in giving such blessings so long as they don't imply a same-sex union is equivalent to heterosexual marriage. Okay, so B, it is not merely all right. So that's the main thing, is everybody saying that he was so clear about what heterosexual marriage is. Yes, he was, but here's where it gets problematic. So A, the church has a very clear conception of marriage, an exclusive, stable, and indissoluble union between man and woman, naturally open to the begetting of children. It calls this union marriage. Other forms of union only realize it in a partial and analogous way, amoris laetitia, so they cannot strictly be called marriage. So notice how, in order to convince everyone that this isn't some new teaching, Francis quotes himself right off the bat.
Even that quote sucks.
It does.
Like, is not even Lutheran. I mean, let's just go like evangelical. Is evangelical communion in a partial and analogous way? No,
Way
it's just
more
not
so-
communion.
But way more so than a same-sex union is a partial or analogous
Right, it's a
union
mockery.
to
It's
marriage.
like, is a black mass a partial and analogous mass? No,
That's
it's the
more like,
opposite.
right, that is a more appropriate analogy. B, it is not a mere question of names, but the reality that we call marriage has a unique essential constitution that demands an exclusive name, not applicable to other realities. It is undoubtedly much more than a mere ideal. So that was in response to something they said. So C, for this reason, the church avoids any kind of rite or sacramental that could contradict this conviction and give the impression that something that is not marriage is recognized as marriage. In dealing with people, however, so anything before but is nonsense, and
Yes.
however is essentially but. But in dealing with people, we must not lose the pastoral charity that must permeate all our decisions and attitudes. The defense of objective truth is not the only expression of this charity, which is also made up of kindness, patience, understanding, tenderness, and encouragement. Therefore, we cannot become judges who only deny, reject, and exclude. I have no problem with that.
Well, hold on. Nick, out of all that list, are any of those virtues?
Well, yeah, it's like those are going to be maybe different actions of the virtue of charity. But again, like where I don't like this is that he's on the one hand kind of assuming that you can take truth you can take truth and separate it from charity, obviously. But the thing is that charity by nature is always going to be intertwined with truth. Like there is really no such thing as charity without truth and truth without charity. So,
And when has the church ever merely been judges who deny, reject, and exclude? Never. It's a false setup. The whole thing is a false framing. He's framing the whole thing incorrectly.
For instance, even in a declaration of excommunication is done in order to bring that person back into the church. It's not meant to exclude them. It's meant as a charitable fraternal correction
To bring them back in.
to bring them back.
So for this reason, pastoral prudence must adequately discern whether there are forms of blessing requested by one or more persons, not a person, one or more persons. That's a couple. So for this reason, pastoral prudence must adequately discern whether there are forms of blessing requested by a couple, that's essentially what he's saying, that do not transmit a mistaken conception of marriage. For when a blessing is requested, one is expressing a request for help from God, a plea for a better life, a trust in a father who can help us to live better.
Oh, so then a man and his mistress can go up and get the relationship blessed then, right?
So look, he's saying as long as we don't confuse, there's no scenario where blessing a same-sex couple, it just doesn't work. On the other hand, although there are situations that from an objective point of view are not morally acceptable, pastoral charity itself demands that we do not simply treat as sinners other people whose guilt or responsibility may be due to their own fault or responsibility, attenuated by various factors that influence subjective imputability. So now, when I was listening to Lofton, he's going, now this is somewhere I wish Francis would have been a little clearer. No, you're missing the point. It's intentionally unclear. And to pretend otherwise is absurd. So he kept bringing up that you have to add this to the 2021 statement from the CDF or DDF that the church cannot bless sin.
Mm-hmm.
And this is part of Francis's magisterium. Cool. Except the author of that document was fired immediately.
Exactly.
Fired immediately. And a photo op was taken with James Martin right afterward. And James Martin released a letter saying how Francis was very upset at the way that was worded.
And why, in this case, do we have to look to a previous document to read in light of, but when it comes to the death penalty, we need to not look at 2,000 years of previous documents to come to the right conclusion for?
Besides the fact that these cardinals submitted a dubia for clarity, and in return received more confusion than there was before it. I'm telling you what's going on here. Francis is laying out, you're not going to get a pronouncement on same-sex unions at this synod. He's giving it to you now. This is what's happening. Decisions which in certain circumstances can form part of a pastoral prudence should not necessarily become a norm. That is to say, it is not appropriate for a diocese, an episcopal conference, or any other ecclesial structure to constantly and officially authorize procedures or rites for all kinds of matters, since everything what is part of a practical discernment in particular circumstances cannot be elevated to the level of a rule. So now Lofton took that and said, that's a shot at the German bishops. No, it's not. Watch. Because this would lead to an intolerable casuistry, another reference to Amoris Laetitia referencing himself. Canon law should not and cannot cover everything, nor should the Episcopal conferences claim to do so with their various documents and protocols, because the life of the church runs through many channels in addition to the normative ones. So here's what's going on. The New Ways ministries out there, the James Martins out there, all of those ministries that, you know, the pride masses, this is saying every one of those priests now are allowed to do that without approval from their superiors. No bishops conference can condemn it. He's giving, this is in the negative. This is telling bishops conferences you cannot,
not even a bishop conference, a diocese.
A diocese can, a bishop cannot tell his priests that no, this priest, this is Summorum Pontificum, where Benedict gives priests the right to say the traditional mass. This is the Summorum Pontificum of the same-sex priests out there and their ministries. They now have the ability to do this. It is the equivalent of don't ask, don't tell for the church. What are you thinking, Nick?
I think two things. So one, I mentioned this yesterday morning on the Meaning of Catholic morning show when we were talking about this. You don't get all of this mentality without a cause, right? And I'll get into where that cause comes in a second. But to be brief, more or less, this is what I see. On the one hand, we see basically what I've been predicting, that Pope Francis is not going to use the term homosexual marriages, same-sex marriages. He's going to avoid that, right? But he's going to go around about it and use other terms, this other conception of a blessing. Where does this idea of blessing something that is just like imperfect, right? He uses that kind of that language. Where does that come from? When you go back to Vatican II's discussion on interreligious marriages, right? Interreligious marriage. Sometimes they're called mixed marriages. I want to emphasize interreligious is not, it's not talking about racial stuff.
Yeah.
Interreligious marriages. When you go back to that discussion, you see a dramatic, dynastic.
That's a nice word. I like it.
Dramatic.
Dramatic.
But by the way, we ran into someone that loved hoopla this weekend.
I know. Oh, we have to tell that story.
We'll
We're
tell
gonna
that story after
We have
this.
a lot of stories to tell you guys about the weekend.
That will be in
but,
locals.
Yeah.
You see a dramatic shift from the 1917 Code of Canon Law to the 1983 Code of Canon Law through Vatican II. You see before the council, on the one hand, the priests are commanded, according to the 1917 Code of Canon Law, to, quote, terrorize the faithful into not going into interreligious marriages, right? That is one of the 6 commandments of the church, right? That you're supposed to marry.
So before the council, they're told to terrorize them.
Yeah. And when I say
to make sure there's no intermixed religiously intermixed marriages.
Exactly. And on the rare occasion that it did take place, it was extremely rare, and they had to go through a ton of forms. So one, the priest had to like actively basically discourage it all throughout what we now call pre-canon and stuff like that. And then the non-Catholic would have to sign an oath saying that they would raise their child Catholic, and the Catholic spouse would have to actively strive to convert the non-Catholic to the Catholic religion, right? So there was all these parameters that were set up to protect the children and to try to win the soul of the unbeliever. Vatican II comes along. You see a lot of discussion. You can find this in like Roberto de Matte's book. Ut Unum Cid is another good book on this, where you see a dramatic shift to where now the 83 Code has this mentality and this language. Well, basically, interreligious marriages, they're not God's ideal. They're not God's ideal because it's ideally 2 faithful Catholics getting married together. But on the other hand, we can say that there is some good in this, because you do see that these people love each other. And especially if it's in the context of a Catholic and say a Protestant, one of the separated brethren, maybe it does in a mysterious way better show the whole oneness in the communion of faith that is the church. So you see this slippery slope start where it's just like, it's not perfect, but can we at least bless the goodness in it, right? They love their kids, they love each other, etc. That mentality and those documents are cited in Amoris Laetitia when it's talking in the famous paragraph 8, when it's talking about divorced and civil remarriages, right? It's basically the same mentality that Pope Francis picked up, which is, though this situation with the divorced and remarried is not God's ideal, can at least we bless the goodness in it? Because again, they love their children. They seem to love each other. Can't we at least say it's not perfect, but it's better than it could be? And I called it 2 years ago. I said, this will be the same argument that they will use for homosexual unions. They're not going to call it marriage, but they will say, look, it's not God's perfect ideal. Can't we, though, at least bless 2 people who seem to love each other, which is not love, but 2 people that seem to love each other and love their children? So that's the first thing. So you don't get any of this without that cause. Second thing is, and this is where I'll finish, in that last paragraph, when it talks with your comments, Anthony, about like how I guess the conservatives are wanting to say, well, look, he is taking a shot at the German bishops. I agree with you. I think that one could try to read that into that, but I don't think that's what he's saying. If you study everything Pope Francis has said on the topic of synodality, even going back into the very beginning of his papacy, what is synodality? It is taking the hierarchical structures of the church and leveling it to just one level, to where everybody is walking on the same path. It's a very communist mentality of everyone's just on the same path, on the same level. And so therefore, in his mind, he's saying, well, you don't need to go to a superior, this medieval thing of a superior. I must go to the king and ask permission to get this. I must go to the Christian monarch and get this permission. What he's saying is, it's like, you priest, you local pastor, you know your situation better than anybody. So maybe you need to be the one who needs to discern, wink, wink, and see if this is going to be something that you can do. So that's exactly what he's doing. He's leveling it, and he's continuing this mentality. And you don't get synodality without collegiality from Vatican II as well. That's another whole lecture, but that's just my point with those 2 causes.
So okay. Lofton said slanderers should apologize for objecting to law Amoris Laetitia, right? Then today, the Vatican response to the dubia submitted by the Czech Cardinal Duca on divorce and remarried communion, that Francis says divorced and remarried Catholics receiving communion is part of the ordinary magisterium now.
Yeah, BS. It's absolutely complete.
Like, you have to really think about what's going on here. So the people who tried to wiggle around that one, you're seeing the same thing happen over and over. Now, I'm not making any judgments on Francis at all. I'm just telling you guys, like, you have to be crazy to think this isn't what they're setting up right now. This is.
Did you actually read the response? I have it up here on screen.
Bring it up. Read it.
So, this is kind of the part that really matters as far as I can see. Who should be the evaluator of the situation? Going up to communion, basically, given the couples in question, any confessor, parish priest, vicar, episcopal vicar, or penitentiary. And basically right here, it's the important part starts here. It is each person individually who is called to put himself before God and expose his conscience to him with both his possibilities and limits. This conscience, accompanied by a priest and enlightened by the guidelines of the church, is called to be formed to evaluate and give sufficient judgment to discern the possibility of accessing the sacraments. In other words, the DDF is saying that a priest really, it's not up to the priest to deny communion. It's up to that person to discern the possibility of accessing communion.
So he's telling priests they can't deny communion to people anymore based on if they're in a second marriage.
Well, he said that he's never denied anybody communion.
We know what he has done, but this is.
Well, read that in light of 2F from the responsa. There are situations that from an objective point of view are not morally acceptable. Charity demands that we do not simply treat others or simply treat as sinners other people whose guilt or responsibility may be due to their own fault or attenuate. So that there can also be used to prevent a priest from denying communion because we're not supposed to treat others as sinners.
This is crazy. And this is the pregame to the synod. This is not even the synod. Like this is the pregame.
This is the tailgate party before the football game.
Let us all give thanks to the imperial interpreter, patriarchal, to tell us about the magisterium of the one and only ecumenical council of Vatican II. Here's the thing with Pope spleeners. They are being uncharitable because they are reading into Francis what they want it to say and not what it actually says. It is not. Look, when you have every major news outlet coming out and saying Francis softens his stance on giving blessings to same-sex unions, they're not just pulling the Pope out of context. And even if they were, wouldn't the Pope have the responsibility to correct that?
Exactly. Why has the Pope not come out and corrected this? And here's the thing. It's this, like, think about how insane this is. They're saying, oh, medias are completely taking the Pope out of context. And then, of course, they'll say, right-wing podcast hosts are taking the Pope out of context. Oh, great. So it's nice to know that all media and pretty much all the really solid Orthodox bishops that you liked a decade ago are now wrong. But this YouTube channel, this is where you find the truth. Thanks for showing up, y'all. By the way, my Patreon's in the bottom.
Yeah. Father Dwight Longnecker says Anglican same-sex blessings were not to be confused with weddings, but they took place in church with flowers, rings, music, fancy clothes, and a splashy reception afterwards. Tell me how the Catholic experience will be different. Because here's the thing.
And that is a former Anglican priest, correct? Who
left the Anglican communion to come here because he wanted to make sure he didn't end up there. So what you're going to have is what happens in the Anglican church. Like you see that Calvin Robinson is in his own group, right?
Mm-hmm.
So within Anglicanism, you have conservative sectors.
Yeah.
Like you do have conservative sectors. That's what Francis wants for us. He wants you to be, you're conservative. Go ahead, go to the conservative parish.
Go to conservative synod.
Catholicism is no longer a religion that has dogma. It is now just
actually,
the dogma is there.
Funny you say that. Did you read 4C?
No, bring it up.
Let me bring it up here. It's okay.
Is 4C in the responsa?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. This was the one on priest. Oh, the one on priesthood. This one.
This is.
laughed at so hard and in sadness, especially this last one. Yeah, the last sentence. The last
So
sentence.
this is specifically talking about JP2's definitive statement that women cannot be ordained. Let us recognize that a clear and authoritative doctrine about the exact nature of a definitive statement has not yet been exhaustively developed. It is not a dogmatic definition, and yet it must be adhered to by all. No one can publicly contradict it, and yet it can be the subject of study, as is the case with the validity of ordinations in the Anglican. They're saying that that it's not a definitive statement that women cannot be ordained, and they even seem to be hinting at that maybe Anglicans really have priests.
There are valid Anglican orders.
I'm saying it's the definitive statement isn't doctrine, it's not dogma. Maybe they are valid.
Yeah, a definitive statement, meaning that you absolutely have to hold it, but yet it's still open to investigation. No, it's not. Like that's the thing. The thing about dogma is that dogma is, you have to think about dogma as like the peak of the mountain, if you will. So you start off in seed form with any teaching of Christ, right? This is how development of doctrine works. You start off with a very small seed, right? Maybe an implicit truth, right? So like, for instance, the hypostatic union, right? You don't see that Thomistic clarity or even the clarity the Council of Nicaea put on that doctrine in the scripture, right? You just don't see that, but you do see the seeds of it in there. Absolutely. Son of man, son of God. And then you work up and you see all the multitude of many other verses, but then you work up until you finally get this, crystalline, perfect diamond, if you will, or the peak of the mountain, which is the hypostatic union with all of its explanations, canons, decrees, etc. Well, when it comes to issues like this is the same thing. Once it reaches the level of a dogma, there's great theologians, right? We talk about, at least over on 1 Peter 5, Dr. John Joy, right? He published a great work on the ordinary universal magisterium, which he very much so argues that this is a definitive dogmatic statement. He may not have come out and used the term like, hey guys, I'm making this a dogma, but he uses all the classic dogmatic language. I define X, right? This is a definitive thing to be held. That's dogmatic. So why would you then turn around, put a doubt, like Satan in the garden, putting a doubt in Eve's mind, right? Putting a doubt in our minds, and then on top of that, talk about what Leo the 13th has already, opened and closed with Anglican orders, right? That they're invalid. They're completely invalid. But this is the thing, my guys. Like at the end of the day, all of this comes down to the fact, like I've said for a while now, this is no longer in many ways the Catholic Church. You're going to see people who are going to be, occupying seats of position in the Catholic Church, but at the end of the day, this is going to be the modernist complete takeover. So it's not like these guys, they just all got Fs on their dogmatic classes and then just somehow poof, they got appointed.
No,
right?
This is intentional. They are infiltrating, and it's a revolution. So, Cat Named Mouse, I converted in part because the Catholic Church has clearly defined beliefs grounded in scripture, tradition, and the magisterium. Now they're trying to blow it all up. I've mentioned on the show before how so much of like the final piece that set into place, like the final puzzle piece that came in, was seeing how the church stood tall on contraception when every other Christian communion just fell like dominoes. Every single one of them fell like dominoes. And seeing that the church, it was a divine intervention in my eyes. It was just God did not, because you knew all of them wanted to change it, but the Pope put his foot down and said, absolutely not. We're not going to do this. Now, in practice, nobody followed it. So what I see Francis doing here is playing the look. We're not going to change anything on paper, in dogma and doctrine. Look, you traditionalists and you rigid crazies, you guys get to hold that the church has not changed anything. But in practice, it's going to be a free for all. Mm-hmm. It's wild.
So, Nick, is what you were saying with this not being an act of the church, what got me thinking about this act is like, so the cardinals submitted the Dubia, they got a response that was clouded things even more than they were, and then resubmitted Dubia with yes or no, And like I was thinking is like what is Burke? What is Syrah? What is them? What's their goal here? And it got me thinking like the responses were predictably bad where you can read whatever you want into them. So they give them the yes or no questions where there's really three options. Francis can either answer yes to all of them or to some of them. And now the way those questions are worded, like a yes would be heresy. Like no doubt it would be clear
they're
heresy.
trying to get Francis to either deny, they're trying to get him to answer in the affirmative anathematized positions.
Yes.
Previously anathematized positions. Right?
Or he answers no and dashes
The Synod.
every goal of the Synod. But like, why would it seems like they're trying to provoke potential yeses. And the question is why? And if they get him to literally assent to heresy, I mean, I think there's some cardinals, these five and probably others that are looking for a reason to start some sort of canonical process. I don't know what it would be. I don't know if anyone knows what it would be. I mean, the guidance from the saints is all over the place as to what it could look like, right?
Yeah.
But I think they want to nail him on something where they can say, this is what we need to actually start to take real action, whatever that ends up being.
Yeah.
So Davi's asking, how do we square this with papal infallibility? So this was a lot of our conversation this weekend. Not the recorded stuff, but behind the scenes is what we were talking about. Now, this is why, like, I don't know, guys. I'm being dead honest. I don't know. And it's why I don't judge people who say Francis is an anti-pope, because it kind of solves a lot of problems, right? I mean, if he is one, but I don't know how that process works. How does that work? Is it that a future pope has to declare him? I don't know. I don't know. And I don't think any of us have the ability to answer that properly. I don't know. I just know that we do have the promise of Christ that the gates of hell will not prevail. I don't know.
I could answer that, the question on infallibility.
Yeah.
So I would say that infallibility, we have to remember, is actually way more limited than it is believed. So when we speak of papal infallibility, we're talking about what's called the extraordinary magisterium. So it's whenever the Pope by himself in his office, or the Pope in union with all the bishops of the world in the context of an ecumenical council say, we believe definitively thus, or, we anathematize definitively thus, etc. Right? So you can think of as examples, canons decrees of the Council of Trent, canons decrees of Vatican I, obviously the Immaculate Conception, the Assumption of Our Lady, etc. Those are going to be statements of infallibility. And infallibility in the context of just the Pope, it's going to be the Pope solemnly in his own role commenting on faith and morals, right? So we believe that when he's doing that in that type of solemn act, that he is going to be infallible. Now, that does not mean, and see, this is what I've found out, as a Catholic coming into all of this, is that apparently back in the day, right, Catholic Answers, other groups, they would often say, especially to Protestants, what this doesn't mean, and they're correct on this, what this doesn't mean is that the Pope is correct in everything that he says, right? There are levels of magisterium below that, many of which are going to be classified according to theologians as non-definitive.
Mm-hmm.
So everything that we're seeing in these contexts easily falls under non-definitive. When the response of that Dubia to the Czech bishops that you pulled up, Rob, whenever that comment said that it is part of the ordinary magisterium, I said that's BS, and it is BS, because the ordinary magisterium is what has been taught by the popes and the bishops for all time.
Yes.
And this is clearly something.
Maybe the wording was actually authentic magisterium. I don't think he said ordinary. I think in the response to the Cardinal Duca letter, it said ordinary magisterium.
Even let's say he did say authentic, just to play advocate. What if he was to say authentic? Even then, it wouldn't work. You know why it wouldn't work? Because, and I recommend everyone, if they just want to completely nerd out and just see a full treatment on this, is a good place to start, right? Sacra Theologia Summa on the Church of Christ. One of the things for a magisterial document to be truly a magisterial document is that it's living, authentic, ordinary, and key word that you'll find in the old manuals, traditional. When you look up what that means, the traditional magisterium is that the Pope does not have the right, especially according to Vatican I, to introduce into the deposit of faith some novelty that is foreign to the body of Christ and to its deposit. And so therefore, an idea like this is completely novel. This type of moral theology is completely not just novel, but egregious. And so that's how you would have to go about solving this. It is somewhat complex, but it is a rigorous system that has been worked out for the good. And I think moving forward with that, you also have to realize that even what you brought up, Anthony, when it comes to like the church shall not pass away, right? Or the gates of hell will not prevail against the church. That is the doctrine of indefectibility, which a lot of Catholics think means impeccability, that the church will never have a problem in it or something to that effect. You do even see that in some of the pre-Vatican II ultramontane language. But all indefectibility means, and it's not even a dogma, by the way, it's actually a certain proposition. But all that means is that Christ will never abandon his church. There will always be a pope, and that pope will never teach something in the definitive, extraordinary magisterial context that is heresy, and there will always be sacraments, and that the church will endure to the end of time, even if it be small. That's all we know. So it's like, if like St. Athanasius, the number of true Catholics is reduced to a small handful, but yet they have the sacraments and there is a pope, well then, yeah, that is the church.
Yeah, and even the gates of hell prevailing, I've heard it said that the church will never teach officially heresy. Like, I don't think the church is officially teaching heresy. I don't think we've reached that point. I think you have but you could see what is going on, right? You see this synod was set up by all the men that have been elevated over the last decade, were put in place because they were the men that were going to go along with this. It's even the new DDF prefect, he's the one that wrote all of these responses to these things. I mean, he is a wordsmith, this man.
Terrible
he is a
one.
wordsmith.
He's like no pre-Vatican II response. If you go back to the pre-Vatican II responses, you're just going to get very precise language. Yeah. They'll ask a paragraph question, response, yes.
You can tell he's just he's thinking to himself, where in here can I put something about kissing?
I just really think that the time for actual penance is really coming. Like, I think we need to do something with anybody who really watches our channel together. That's a good question, Davi.
This is for Nick more than anything.
Well,
yeah,
Nick just bailed on us.
I'm still here.
I think we should do something as a channel, some extra penance. I mean, Our Lady was adamant at Fatima, penance is all you heard.
The Advent fast is coming up 3 or 4 weeks from now. 3 or 4 weeks from now.
We're gonna do St. Michael's St. Martin's Lent.
That's what it is.
November 12th. So
yeah, it's the Advent one. So suggestions on understanding infallibility, I would recommend 2 sources. One is probably going to be way more, I would say easier to understand, especially if you're really diving into this. So, well, actually 3. I'll give you 3. One is going to be Dr. John Joy's book, right? Understanding. Yeah, there's some truth to that. Understanding the magisterium, right? So go on to 1 Peter 5 and look up Dr. John Joy, and you'll see advertisements for his book. I think you can link it into Amazon or something like that. We have the links there at 1 Peter 5. So that's the first one. Second one is going to be the book Church or Pope. You can find that over on Angelus Press, and it's kind of a full treatment of the magisterium that really, really helps. Yeah, Dr. John Joy, exactly. So Church or Magisterium, Dr. John Joy's book. And then third, if you're really wanting to go into like the absolute big depth, the Sacra Theologiae Summa. It's a pre-Vatican II manual on the Church of Christ. It has a whole section in here on papal infallibility and the theological weights of, Roman congregations and stuff like that. That's if you really want to nerd out, but I'd recommend those first 2 books as a start.
Listen, one of the other things we talked about this weekend was how, because I put up a poll recently and I said, who brought more people to tradition? Was it Archbishop Lefebvre or Pope Francis? How would you answer that, Nick?
That's a really good question. I actually like that. This is your polls are the only reason that I sometimes want to get on Twitter.
Well, today I asked two. All right, so today I put 2 polls up. Well, the first one was, is Francis Catholic? And the
both
stats
polls were that.
Huh?
That was both polls. You just
They
changed
were
the
different.
answers.
They were different, slightly differently worded. Okay, so the first poll was, is Francis Catholic? And more people answered yes than no. The second poll was, does Francis believe the Catholic faith? Because any baptized person is a Catholic.
Yeah.
So when I asked, does Francis believe the Catholic faith, the poll switched the other way completely. Now, I wasn't asking it because I was implying anything. I'm curious to know what the average person who follows me thinks, because, I mean, we are in a time that is so unbelievably confusing that when I was seeing people really like argue with me, I wish I would have brought up some of the people arguing against the things I was saying, because so much of it is just a denial of reality, in my opinion. It's just people actually claiming they know better than what, like, they're putting their own interpretation on it. And I'm just I'm putting my own interpretation on it, of course. So look, when Lofton reads it, he's reading all the positive, right? He's going, look at all these good things. That marriage is the indissoluble union between a man and a woman. And he's bringing up all the
but when you
things.
have to read every third word to do that and like make a cipher out of it, then that's just BS.
But the whole point is, I think that's part of it, right? It's yes, he's going to say a bunch of good things because it's a game. The whole thing's a game. So by saying all those good things, now he can throw some ambiguity in, and we know how ambiguity works in the post-concilia era.
Right.
Whatever.
It's why they will never answer the yes or no questions.
Right. They will never answer those yes or no questions.
Which I think gives you the real answers to the original Dubia.
Well, silence in itself is an answer, right? So,
right,
so when they ask our Lord, are you the Messiah? And when he's standing before the Sanhedrin in silence, that's the Lord speaking, right? That's a strange one to meditate on. When the Lord is silent before the Sanhedrin and they spit in his face, that's God speaking. You know, it's the word of God at that moment. So, what Francis is doing right now by not answering is telling you that he can't answer them. He can't give you a yes or no. He can't, because his true intentions are the interpretation we're giving it.
Yeah, I think what you could do is, I mean, here's a question I had posed to me once on a show I did maybe 7-8 months ago. I was talking with Miss Angela and our good friend Angela Erickson, and we were talking about, is Joe Biden a Catholic, and should he be excommunicated? If we were to just ask the question, is Joe Biden a Catholic? Probably 99% of you guys in the chat would say, no, he is not a Catholic, right? Especially we all cringe when we see, especially the media say, you know, the second Catholic president of the United States, right? We're all just kind of cringe, and we have to explain it away to our non-Catholic family members. And we'd say that because he clearly openly denies elements of the Catholic faith. What's harder with Pope Francis is that when we ask that same question, is Pope Francis Catholic? I would actually push back a little bit and or maybe just ask for some clarification from you guys, but it's like this. So just because you're baptized doesn't mean that you're Catholic. It's actually 3 things that's required, according to Pope Pius XII. So you have to be, baptized. That's absolutely what's required. So baptism, right, gives you that indelible mark. But it's also, right, it's participation in all, right, the same sacraments, holding to the same faith, and under the same heads of authority, right? And when it says under the same head, that's not meaning obey every jot and tittle. That just means that you're underneath their spiritual headship, etc. So that's the threefold thing of what makes a Catholic. Can we really say that what is being put out right now is the same faith as you would have had being put out by the Roman congregations under Pope St. Pius X? And those guys were absolutely heretic hunting every single person that they could possibly find. It's not the same thing. And to answer your poll, Anthony, on at least who brought more people to tradition, I would still say Archbishop Lefebvre only in the long-term effects, just because, to be honest, Pope Francis will be a flash in the pan in the sense that in the long term of church history, we will look back and we will say, this guy was absolutely crazy. but it's also like this. Who remembers these names more, Saint Athanasius or Honorius? You have to be a really deep theology nerd to be like, oh yeah, Honorius is, yeah. But we all know who Athanasius is. Archbishop Lefebvre is Saint Athanasius 2.0, and so the long
here's why
the big difference between Lefebvre and Francis is one will be canonized because he's a saint, and one will be canonized because he's a pope after Vatican II.
That's a good point. But the reason I really say it is because when I listen to Michael Matt, and he talks about those early days of tradition, and it's 4 people in a basement with a rogue priest going down there and saying mass in a basement, and there was no momentum at all. And Francis, I mean, to me, the traditional movement blows up at 2 points. One, McCarrick, when that happened, and everybody starts listening to Taylor Marshall, you get a huge bump. And so I guess Summorum would be the first small bump. Then McCarrick with Taylor telling everybody at the Latin Mass is the next bump. And then 2020.
Sure, yeah.
2020, parishes explode because the Novus Ordo was shut down. And a lot of traditional priests were giving the sacraments. And it once people were exposed to tradition, it really set their hearts on fire. I mean, I talked to so many people that 2020 was a catalyst for them. Mm-hmm. We hung out with Victor from Return of the King this weekend. He came up to Pennsylvania, and his story is 2020. Everything changed for him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, those are fair points. Think of it this though. Archbishop Lefebvre, you can think of as that initial cause, and everything we're experiencing is the effect. So just think about how crazy this is. You have essentially one bishop, right? There's Bishop de Castromayor too, but it's essentially one bishop, right?
Wait, I got to stop you for 1 sec. Because Nancy Charles just came into the church on last Friday.
She is Joshua Charles' sister.
Charles' sister.
Yeah, I remember that. Congratulations.
We were praying for her all weekend on this trip.
Father Nick's offered mass for her.
We were offering mass for her every day. We're gonna get Nancy on because Nancy has a crazy story from where she came from to where she is now, and it's
truly a miracle,
a legit miracle, like a miraculous conversion. And I'm really,
I saw. Was she coming into the church through like the fraternity? I think, or something. I
think so. And look, Rob has a policy that we're not allowed to have women on the show. I am fighting him for this one, Rob. I'm putting my foot down. We're having Nancy on. I know you're a misogynist and you can't stand women, but I'm putting my foot down on this one. I'm so excited to talk to Nancy. I can't believe Nancy likes our show. It's my favorite thing about her. Obviously, I'm a narcissist. You guys really helped me on my walk with this pod. That's crazy to me that people ever say things like that. No, Nancy, you're a doll. It was very nice to talk to you the other day. But Nick, I cut you off. What were you saying?
Oh, it's good. No, that's awesome, Nancy. I'm glad you're jumping into the faith, even in a crazy time like this. I would say, think of it this way: like Archbishop Lefebvre, he's one bishop, right? Who he's not trying to preserve the TLM because he's just like some sad sack who can't get with the times or something. Like he sees the absolute urgent need for priests. He is like truly a saint after the heart of Saint Jean Vianney and our Lord when he recognizes that a priest is good priest is a great blessing and love of God over you and in your parish, right? And that's something we got to think about how insane this is. Like God saves us through those men and through their actions. And God also, right, chastises us through those men, right, whenever they're very, very bad, right, according to St. John Eudes. But Archbishop Lefebvre, he starts this, and a lot of us, right, from the examples that you gave, right, with the McCarrick stuff and then the 2020, a lot of that is almost like us catching up. So it's whenever it starts to be fully mainstream. Yeah. There's already been over 1.2 million people in the SSPX living their normal Catholic lives for 60 years. And it's so funny because like all of us were like freaking out. And then you go to like the SSPX parish and they're just like, yeah, man, like, look, I've gone through like 50 of these things.
But Nick, you came in late. Well, like when I tell you, you don't know what we thought of the SSPX.
Oh no, for sure.
7-8 years ago, we were told they're schismatic. They're schismatic, and it really took.
Now Scott Hahn is schismatic, and all the good bishops who told us not to go to the SSPX. Yeah, they're awesome.
It's crazy how even the conversation has changed so much in the past few years. It's one of those things where it was like FSSP good, SSPX bad. You would have priests that I love their homilies that I would listen to on Sensus Fidelium, like really going at people for getting married at the SSPX, saying your marriage is invalid, you can't do this, like really going after them. So it's been a really, the strangest thing is that Francis actually gave them faculties for marriage. That's why I'm saying what Francis wants is very similar to the Anglican Communion. He wants, look, you could have your little conservative, it's going to just be split. It's going to be split. You're going to see not one schism, you're going to see 50 schisms.
Yeah, think about how this will hit the practical of the diocesan level. You'll see certain parishes which are just going to be out and open, right? Especially after the synod takes place and all this stuff gets more formalized, if you will. You'll see rainbow flags here, there, and everywhere on all these different parishes, and you're going to have people who don't even know where to go to confession anymore.
Yeah,
because there's going to be confusion everywhere, diocese versus diocese.
Yeah, Joseph, I kind of me and Enoch talk about
ever.
Me and Enoch talk about this, man. It's like Enoch's like, I want a Francis II. Look at what he's done he's lit a lot of our hearts on fire, man. It's funny how God works like that. It's funny how God works like that. I've had several cases in my life where my faith was starting to wane, and God sends a little tragedy into your life, and all of a sudden you're back on fire for God, man. And that's what Francis is. He's a bit of a scare and a tragedy, and it's scaring everybody. Everybody's nervous about what's going on in the church, and I'm very hopeful. I
am too. Like, I'm telling people not to despair. There's definitely been temptations to despair in my walk as a Catholic, but it's just like when you read, especially you guys are good at talking about this. When you read that Old Testament and you're just looking at all the absolute insanities going on with the children of Israel, and God constantly having to chastise them, but yet God also being ever faithful to them and leading them through their absolutely insane idolatry and fornication and all kinds of stuff like that. God is faithful. He's going to lead us through.
Yeah, listen, you're talking about Joshua Charles comes in under Francis. Nancy Charles comes in under Francis. I saw several of my siblings come to the faith under Francis. I'm telling you guys, don't despair. This is an exciting time to be Catholic.
My wife I came back. You came back.
Yeah. Well, I came back under Benedict, but we're witnessing an awakening of God's children right now. And look, we try not to do these shows too often because we don't always want to focus on the negative. And oh my gosh. Is that going to Nancy?
Well, I don't know if it's going to Nancy or that's a bribe to get her on.
She's amazing. I think we try not to do these shows too often because we don't want people to despair. We want people to be excited to be Catholic.
You're exactly right. I think we really need to make a point of that. Like, granted, the weekend trip was before this latest Dubia stuff, but like, we went and hung out with 9 guys at daily mass, and we talk about Francis a little, but most of our conversation was just about being Catholic guys, and it was fun.
What's crazy is so not just that. We got to tell you guys this story. Me and Rob. Okay, so Rob's never been to New York City.
Nope.
So we drive back to New York City, and we got a couple hours to kill between taking Rob to the airport. So I'm like, let me take you to Holy Innocents, Rob. That's, it's my favorite parish. Let me take you to Holy Innocents. We go to Holy Innocents, and as soon as we walk in, a woman comes up to me at first, and she goes, Anthony? And I'm like, hi. I didn't know who it was. She's like,
I heard that. I'm like, really? Another one of his relatives?
So, she goes, I cannot tell you how much you guys mean to me. I go, Rob's here too. So Rob comes out and she's like, you guys don't understand. I'm about to cry right now. I'm so excited to meet you guys. I love you guys. So we know her from the chat. Her name's usually Donna Lisa. So if you guys ever see Donna Lisa in the chat, say hello to her. We met her and her husband just randomly. So she lives on Long Island, and she asked in the chat a couple of weeks ago, she said, where can I find a Latin mass on Long Island? And I told her to go to St. Matthew's. So she just went to her first Latin mass at St. Matthew's a couple of weeks ago. So you see things like this, like God stirring.
She's begun veiling because of it. And
she started veiling, and little things like just seeing how it's not all doom and gloom, and like you could listen to our show and everything be a little silly and goofy and stuff. Like I was very touched by the things she was saying to us. It was really, it was amazing. So to have that happen, but it was funny because she's from Long Island. She just happened to be visiting the city. She was going to see her son or her daughter, and just stopped in Holy Innocents because I had mentioned it so many times. And she stops in there and happens to see me while she's there. And she must have felt like she was like bugging out or something. It was just such a random thing, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So
the best part is when she called Father Dix.
No, she didn't. Father Mayara did.
Oh, that's right.
Father
That's even
Mayara.
funnier.
He thought, well, you got to remember, it's Stevie Nicks. It sounds like Stevie Nicks. So we went and saw Father Mayara while we were there, and Father Dave Nicks went to confession with Father Mayara while we were there. So, and he came and goes, your Father Dick? No, Nicks. Okay, Nicks. And we got to see him for a little bit.
So for those, for anyone who hasn't seen Holy Innocents, I took a couple of pictures. So
it's a beautiful church.
It's funny because
it's all right. I personally like the parking garage theme in the new churches myself.
But from the outside, it's inconspicuous, right, Rob? Like from the outside, you think nothing.
When it was built in 1925, it was probably the tallest building on that block,
and there was nothing next to it.
Now it looks like it's this skinny little church that was built between two skyscrapers.
Oh, okay. No, we're good. I saw that blue advertisement next to it, and I just saw B, and I got nervous. I was like, is this Bud Light advertisement?
No. He's right, though. When that church was built, it was the tallest building. There were no buildings next to it. Now it's sandwiched between two buildings. It's an old church. You really wouldn't even notice it from the outside. And then you go inside.
When we pulled up on that block and you pull over to park, I'm like, what, are we walking a block down? And you're like, no, it's literally like right there.
Yeah, just look up. So it's my favorite church. I just think it has confession 3 times a day. It has the daily Latin mass every day. Not enough wood paneling and shag carpet. So we're going to, where'd Rob go? I didn't boot him. That wasn't me. Must have lost his internet connection.
I don't have that power. So
the funny thing is, now we have to stay on here for a few minutes because I can't even get us over to locals without Rob. I don't even know how to do that. But yeah, we're going to finish out the show over on locals, and I want to tell everybody about our trip because this trip.
Hold on, I got something else to show before we switch over real quick. Let me bring it up here. I don't know why I cut out. That was weird.
Aaron said Rob meant to drop Anthony. He
dropped myself. Darn it. Hold on.
So listen, for anybody that's in here and wants to watch the locals, it'll be free. You guys can just come over to locals. It's free. Just pop over.
Look who's the locals.
Donna Lisa, thank you for bringing me up. I felt embarrassed afterward. Yipes, my poor husband. No, you guys were awesome.
It was really cool. Actually.
It was. You got to realize, like so I've had it happen a few times, right? A few times somebody has come up to me at mass and said something to me. I love when people do that. It's just the idea that our show is growing is cool, and then and when people like actually enjoy this nonsense, I don't understand it. I don't know why you guys watch. But.
And like you and I always say, our favorite thing about having done this now for the last year and a half is just the people we've met, like Nick, like everyone we hung out with last weekend. But like getting to know the people that watch too. Like,
listen,
that's my favorite part of all this.
I opened that trip up to anyone on our locals. I said, if anybody on locals is in the PA area and the Poconos area and you want to come, reach out to me. Alex Malone is in our Telegram. Yep. And he reached out. I said, yeah, dude, here's the address. He stopped by and he spent the night with us. That lunatic left his wife in a hotel and came and hung out with us. My wife would have killed me. I don't know what he was thinking.
To be fair, have we heard from him since?
No, his wife might have killed him. So Alex was going to the Catholic Identity Conference on Friday. So he was like, if I came a day early, can I come and hang with you guys? I was like, yeah, absolutely. Come on. So I love when that happens. I met Joe Boca on the confessional line 2 weeks ago. Oh, really? That's awesome.
I have people all the time at the cathedral in Austin where I go to mass. I have people all the time who bring you guys up, bring Tim up, they'll come up to me. And you guys are absolutely right. It's like the best part of doing this is the people you meet both like through interview format and through.
Yeah, the friends we've met. So Tom is in here, right? So Tom goes to St. Matthew's. So I met Tom at church. We hung out and had breakfast one day after mass when we had, I had one of those breakfasts after mass. I got to sit and hang with him and stuff. So to me, I don't have much of a Catholic community other than what we're doing here. So it really is awesome to meet people. What we did on that trip, though, was, first off, Rob, what'd you think of the house?
It was awesome.
I was nervous for a second.
No, I was just
Mac. That's not an impossibility. Just so you know.
So I was just I put this on the screen because like that theoretically could happen now.
It's not a crazy thing. We do have connections to Mel Gibson now.
Father Nix was actually considering FaceTiming him while he was there, but
so Aaron just got back from Florida to start over, please. We're gonna get Aaron on soon. I want to hear, because Aaron's a Protestant. We're gonna proselytize him and waterboard him until he becomes Catholic.
This guy always says that we need to repeat it every stream.
Yeah, we're gonna waterboard him. We're gonna proselytize him. All right. You want to do that all on locals? Tell everybody about our trip. Exactly, Tyler.
Well, and that's the thing too. Like, this is my community too. I don't have cool parishes like so many of you guys,
which is why I forced you guys to do the meetup.
Yeah, you did.
And why we should start a GoFundMe to help Rob move. Help him move to St. Mary's, Kansas.
You should really help me move before Rob. Rob's at least Rob's at least safe where he is.
All right, guys, we're gonna start. I need everyone to go over to locals, drop some major cash in there.
Yeah.
Fun for Anthony and Rob to get out of their blue states into a red one.
Listen,
I was gonna say, or get us Mel as a funder. That'd be
right. I would say just join our locals, guys. Look, we put a lot into this. You guys are saying we're your Catholic community. Come on, throw $5 up and come hang with us. We're trying to make this a little bit more of a real thing. We want to get better equipment. We want to make this show better for you guys. We need all that. It's my stock comment, Nick, whenever I'm late to something.
I like it, Aaron. I like it. It's a good one. I'm going to start using that.
Isn't water kind of like antithetical to traditionally what we do to Protestants?
What, you mean burn them at the stake? Yeah,
we should probably switch to locals before
I would love to do these things around the country. That's the thing. So if we do get big enough, that's what we're going to do. We're going to pick places. We'll put polls out like what city would work best for everyone, and wherever the most people can congregate, we'll go to that city and we'll do something.
Like what we talked about, it'd be cool to.
Nowhere.
What was that, Nick? Sorry.
I'm just gonna raid those polls when you guys get big enough with thousands of bots, so that you guys show up in some cornfield in Iowa.
Aaron would love that. That's where he's at.
Yeah, right.
Hang out with you.
So we get baptized with kerosene.
We did talk about in the future, hopefully we're big enough where we can do like a men's conference or something. But we all talked about how the best part of our weekend was just sitting around and talking with each other as guys. And how cool would a men's conference be if instead of having a speaker get up there and speak to 200 men, what if you had 20 tables, each with 10, well-known guys like Anthony or Kennedy Hall or Father Nix, and you sit around as a group of 10 guys talking on topics, and then you switch. This is what we were
discussing.
Tables.
Yeah, this is what we were discussing this weekend. We said if we did a conference, it wouldn't be like the Catholic Identity Conference, which I heard was an awesome conference this weekend. But I bet we had a lot more fun than anybody at that conference, because when I went to the Coalition conference, my favorite part wasn't the talks. It was spending time with other Catholics afterward. So my idea was, Margot, it won't be just a men's conference.
Right.
It will be open to everyone. My idea is we'll do a 2-day conference. Day 1 are all the talks, and day 2 is hang. That's just actually get everybody that gave a talk, you stay that second day, and we all just hang out. And like Rob would say, maybe set up 20 tables or something. Everybody switches around. You get to meet everybody. You get to come around and just have conversations with everybody, because that was my favorite part.
Just don't have a singles mixer day, because what will happen is you'll have 4 women show up and 60 dudes show up.
Yeah. That's
all of them.
A Catholic conference sprinkled with tobacco and alcohol. Great. That was what we did this weekend.
And
this weekend. This weekend, look, first off, having Father Dave Nix there changed the entire dynamic of the trip.
Hold on. Should we switch to locals now?
Yeah, let's switch to local. Listen, guys, everybody get over to locals. It's free. Just click the link in the description. Get your butts over to locals. We're going to tell some stories. I'll tell you guys all about our weekend, what we did, how much fun it was. And we are going to be, that would be cool coming back to New York. Yeah, let's get over there because I want to tell you guys some funny stories that happened this weekend.
Unite the clans. Enoch. Let's go. Yo. Take me back to my reversion. Unite the clans. I give thanks to each person.